One sci-fi gaming world that very thoroughly portrays a wide variety of space weapons in an extremely dynamic way is the massive multiplayer gaming universe of EVE Online. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say that these weapons in EVE are a realistic portrayal of what space weapons would really be like, but there are some very interesting tactical gaming mechanics here. I shall explain the nature of the 5 major different types of EVE Online weapons, their realism, their mechanics, advantages, and disadvantages. The 5 major different weapon types in EVE are projectile turrets, laser turrets, hybrid turrets, missile launchers, and drones or fighters. Fighters are kind of a specialty weapon in a class of their own. I won't be covering them in this video, nor will I be covering precursor weapons or doomsday devices that Titans use, or other unconventional things such as smart bombs. But the ones I will be covering are the overwhelmingly most commonly used. Projectile turrets. Projectile turrets simply means good old-fashioned guns. They're low-tech and the favorite of the underdogs of the cluster, the Minmatar Republic, which are known to have rusty old ships cobbled together with duct tape, but they have some of the most effective fighting ships in the game. One nice thing about projectiles, since all the energy is stored in the shell or ammo itself, is that they don't use any of the ship's power capacitor. A ship's capacitor is sort of like the warp core on Star Trek. When it runs out of power, many of the ship's modules, including the weapons, can become inoperative. Not the case with projectile weapons. Also, the ammo type can be changed, and there's a buffet of ammo choices. Some projectile ammo is high damage but shorter range, and vice versa. Also, the ammunition can do different damage types. The 4 damage types in EVE are thermal, EM or electromagnetic, kinetic, and explosive. This has some hard science merit, as certain types of shielding or armor may have high resistances from one damage type, but highly vulnerable to another damage type. There are 2 types of projectile weapons, autocannons and artillery. Autocannons are extremely rapid-firing weapons, much like the miniguns you see on modern-day helicopters or the A-10 Warthog. Up close, all those rapid-fire projectiles can do a lot of damage, but the bullets get spread out the further away the target is, although they will still do some damage over distance due to the momentum of the projectiles. Autocannon turrets usually can track fast-moving targets without much of a problem compared to other turrets. The other type of projectile weapon is the artillery turrets. Think of artillery turrets as the big turrets you see on naval battleships. They're slow to turn onto the target, slow to reload, but when they hit hard, and the larger ones can hit targets at extreme ranges. Artillery turrets have what we call a very strong alpha strike. They can shock and penetrate defenses in a sudden, fast volley. But they do have a major disadvantage, and that is tracking and slow reload time. They have trouble hitting targets with high transversal, meaning that if the turret has to move to track a target that is also moving, these turrets have a tendency to miss. A popular counter to these weapons is getting under the guns, best used by small, agile ships, to harry the target in a way artillery weapons cannot hit. Lasers. Laser turrets are on the other end of the tech spectrum from projectile turrets. These are the favorite weapons of the Amarr Empire. Unlike projectile weapons, lasers use a lot of the ship's power capacitor. Lasers can only do EM and thermal damage, and cannot change their damage type. Lasers have some of the best damage projection over range in the game. They don't have the shock and awe of artillery, but they're precise, and instead of ammunition they use laser crystals. These crystals can change the effective range of the laser, probably by changing the wavelength of the beam. Pulse laser turrets are faster tracking short range, while beam laser turrets are slower tracking long range turrets, although not quite as slow as artillery when it comes to tracking. Of course, the game shows lasers as visible beams of light. In reality, the most you might see, even for lasers on the visible wavelengths, is sunlight at the emitter. But lasers in EVE can be used for impressive light shows, great for gatherings at parties, techno concerts, and raves. The other thing about EVE's lasers that doesn't quite match up to reality is the range. Laser ranges can at best cover about 150, maybe 200 kilometers, but a space-based laser could probably hit out much further than that. Of course, light attenuation might reduce the damage over distance, but this is just a game, right? Also, larger laser turrets do suffer from slow tracking and may not be able to hit agile targets, although this weakness is not quite as bad as larger artillery turrets. Hybrid weapons. A hybrid weapon is a combination of an energy weapon and a projectile weapon. They're popular in both Gallente Federation ships and the Caldari state. There are two categories, blaster turrets and railgun turrets. Probably the closest thing to Star Wars weapons in EVE are blaster turrets. They fire a packet of energized particles, pretty much a plasma bolt. They're capable of inflicting more damage per second than any other turret in EVE. Their one weakness is range. These projectiles of plasma dissipate quickly. The smallest of these weapons are not very effective beyond a few kilometers, and the largest only maybe a couple dozen kilometers, maybe a little more. They do thermal and kinetic damage and cannot change their damage type. Although they use ammo, they use some of the ship's power capacitor. The different ammo types serve only to increase or decrease the range a bit, while decreasing or increasing the weapon's damage output respectively. But blasters are some of the better tracking turrets in the game, and up close they can track and hit in a way comparable to autocannons. Railgun turrets are the other hybrid weapon type. Railgun turrets come in a variety of sizes. The smallest ones, with the right ammo, are almost as good as blasters or autocannons for tracking a target at close range. The largest ones, again with the right ammo, can hit out to extreme ranges very comparable to artillery. They do not have the alpha strike value of artillery, but they are a little more versatile. But just like larger artillery and laser turrets, larger railguns can have trouble tracking and hitting agile targets. Missiles. Missiles in EVE are a very complex weapon. They see used by almost all of the factions in the game, but especially by the Caldari state. Missiles are not a turret weapon. They do not suffer from problems such as fall-off, tracking, and things of this nature, nor do they use any of the ship's capacitor. These are all great advantages. Their disadvantages all depend on the flight time, speed, and explosion radius of the missiles, and slower missiles suffer from a delay before hitting the target, while some fast targets can actually outrun the missile until the missile runs out of fuel. Missiles also suffer from a low rate of fire and low reload time. Missile weapons can come in the following categories: rockets, light missiles, rapid light missiles, heavy missiles, rapid heavy missiles, heavy assault missiles, torpedoes, rapid torpedoes, and cruise missiles. You could also lump bombs in here, that is to say only the bombs used by stealth bombers, which travel very slowly and have an area of effect damage type. But yeah, that's a lot of missile types. The ones you will see the most are the rockets, light missiles, rapid light missiles, heavy assault missiles, and torpedoes. Rockets are the shortest range missiles used by frigates and can do a lot of damage to smaller targets with ease. Light missiles are long-range missiles used by frigates. Rapid light missiles are a long-range weapon used by cruisers and sometimes battleships. They're not as high damage dealing as heavy missiles or heavy assault missiles, but they're very effective at destroying smaller targets such as frigates. Heavy assault missiles have a fair bit of range, are great at doing a lot of damage, but may have trouble applying their damage to smaller targets such as frigates. Torpedoes are some of the highest damage dealing, but very ineffective against smaller ships. The weird thing about missiles in EVE is that compared to real life, they're not particularly long range. Missiles in game can cover a couple hundred kilometers at the extreme end, but they can do this in a matter of seconds, unlike most missiles in real life. A real-life weapon may need some minutes to cover that range, even if it's supersonic. Long-range smart missiles are just not a thing in EVE. If they were, they would have to have a warp drive and some kind of significant AI to fly around, track the target, zero in on it, and attack. And finally, we have combat drones, or just drones in general. Combat drones are used by all factions in EVE, but especially by the Gallente Federation. They are probably the most versatile weapons in the game. A drone is a small, automated, unmanned craft with its own independent weapons and defenses, something like a fighter, but with no one actually piloting it. Drones do not use the ship's capacitor, and they do not rely on tracking, fall-off, or even suffer from flight time like missiles. These are all great advantages. Their major weakness is they can be destroyed. They can also be lost or abandoned by neglectful, heartless capsuleers who warp off before remembering to recall the poor things. Abandoned in the dark of space, occasionally the AI of these drones will go rogue and become part of a rogue drone swarm, AI abominations like no other. So pilots, treat your drones well. Do not abandon them. The combat drones come in light, medium, and heavy sizes. Just like ships, drones are also broken up by faction. Galanti drones are slow but powerful. Mimitar drones are the fastest, while Kaderi and Amar drones are somewhere in the middle, and each faction can do a different damage type. Ships that specialize in using drones will often have a variety of drones, and they can set up different flights of drones for different tasks. Light drones are great for attacking small, agile ships such as frigates, and heavy drones are great for unleashing hell on larger ships such as cruisers and battleships. One may also have a different flight for different types of damage. For example, Amar drones do EM and thermal damage, while Mimitar drones do explosive and kinetic damage. This variety is effective for finding a resist hole in the target. Another interesting type of drone is a sentry drone, which is pretty much a mobile turret in space. Sentry drones are great at projecting damage over long range, but can suffer from poor tracking and are also virtually stationary, so they must be tended to. There are also E-War drones, such as ECM drones that can disrupt a ship's targeting ability, or sensor dampening drones that will lower the targeting range of the victim. Other E-War drones are pretty much useless. And finally, there are utility drones that will actually repair a friendly ship's shields or armor while in the heat of combat. And of course, there are fighters, which are only able to be used by carriers and space stations, but that is a topic for another video. But these 5 weapons are all overwhelmingly the most commonly used in EVE. Well, thanks for watching, Space Friends. If you play EVE and are interested in trying some player versus player combat, our corp, Interstellar Booty Hunters, is recruiting. Details are in the description. If we're not the right corp for you, or if you don't qualify, you're free to be our in-game friend, or let me direct you to the right corporation. Please like, share, subscribe, and consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/resurrected. Until next time.